babies. Welcome back to this week's Pachter Factor. I'm Michael Pachter, at Michael Pachter on Twitter. If you're watching this on SIFTD.net, if you're a Patreon patron, thank you so much for your patronage. It is not expensive and it helps to keep the show going. If you are watching on YouTube, we appreciate that as well. Obviously, if you can't afford SIFTD, get it. But please, just as a concession to my ego, follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter, follow Shane at Dinfire, and follow SIFTD at SIFTD Games. Our first question this week from YouTube, from Jared Barzy. Hey Pac, with the news of Reggie retiring as president of Nintendo of America, do you have a favorite memory or story of Reggie you can share? What do you think his departure means for the future of the company? What was Reggie's biggest achievement during his tenure at Nintendo? You know, I have to say, I don't have a whole lot of cool anecdotes about Reggie. I like the guy. I think he's a very capable executive. I think that Reggie is one of those people who didn't like to hear a whole lot of criticism, and as you all know, I was pretty critical of Nintendo, and I don't think I've ever once been critical of Reggie. Reggie's primary responsibility in America was the sales, marketing, and distribution of Nintendo products. He obviously didn't make games. I don't think he was a member of the management team that decided to greenlight, Super Smash Brothers. But he definitely came up with marketing campaigns, and they were exceptionally good. But I was consistently critical of Nintendo's management team back in Japan and of their mobile strategy, which again, I don't think Reggie had anything more than listening in on mobile strategy. And I think it made Reggie uncomfortable. So in fairness, he kind of avoided me. I mean, he was polite. He was always civil, always really a friendly, great guy when I saw him. But I don't think Reggie ever once came to my E3 party, just to make an example. And Phil Spencer comes to my E3 party. Jack Tretton, followed by Sean Layden, came to my E3 party. Kaz Hirai has been to my E3 party, but Robbie Bach, Peter Moore, but not Reggie. George Harrison and Perrin Kaplan used to come, but not Reggie. So I'm not particularly close with the guy. I don't have any particularly great anecdotes. As far as his biggest achievement, I have to say truthfully, he came in at the tail end of the GameCube. He really did a masterful job all the way through the Wii years, and he actually, I think his biggest achievement is he didn't really ever allow Nintendo to get criticized too heavily for the Wii U. He went through a couple of really tough years, with the Wii U, and then we had the Switch. And so I think Reggie is an excellent executive when things are good, and I think he's an even better executive when things are bad. So when the Wii U was bad, Reggie kept up the good image. He focused on the software. He downplayed the failure of the hardware, and I think that's really important. You need people in your organization that really support the company's mission. He's very great at that. So I liked him. I just think he's that kind of guy who didn't like criticism. So I ended up, unfortunately for him and fortunately for me, being assigned to talk to Doug Bowser. So I feel very close to Doug Bowser. He is the nicest man I've ever met. He is smart, nice, capable, and I am really happy for him. So I know Doug 10x better than I know Reggie. And someday we might get a question about my favorite anecdote of Doug. I've got a bunch of them. So that's been great for me. And I like Cindy Gordon. I mean, I like the rest of the team. They're all super nice. But I really seriously don't think I've had a one-on-one with Reggie in 3 or 4 years. I've been not offered one. And I think it's because I made him feel bad with my criticism of the company. And so what are you going to do? That's being me. Some people love me. I know you all do, and some people don't. As far as Reggie's departure and impact on the company, as I said, Doug is pretty capable. Now the difference, and Doug is really friendly, and I think consumers are going to like him a lot. But Reggie was this larger than life guy. He just had this. I think he's like 6'2" and kind of my size. Like he's a big, tall, beefy, strong, wonderful guy. Great personality. Doug is a smaller guy. He's not going to fill up a room when he walks in, although he's really got a bright smile. I think Reggie is benefited by his stature, his physical appearance, his name. You know, like how many he's like Madonna. How many people have one name? You know, and I know everybody knows his last name is fils-aime, but it's like he's Reggie. And if you say Reggie, you know, back in the 70s it was Reggie Jackson, but you say Reggie now, everybody in the world knows you mean Reggie fils-aime. So, you know, I think those are big shoes to fill. I think that Nintendo of America is going to be a little lower profile, a little lower key under Doug for a year or so. Doug's great. You know, I think that you're only as good as your content and your product, and the Switch is a great product and the content has been great. So I think Doug will do great. But, you know, Reggie presided over the Switch launch, and he presided over, you know, the Zelda launch, and I mean tons, and the Smash Brothers launch, and the Super Mario Odyssey launch. So Doug gets Pokemon, and I don't even know what's coming next year. You know, Doug gets smaller titles, and I think that people are going to miss Reggie, but I don't think it's a long-term problem for the company. Doug is a game guy. You know, Reggie really was not. He was a consumer products guy and grew into the game business. Doug is a game guy for 20 years. So I think Doug really adds a big, you know, positive dimension, and I think he's going to be great. And I'm calling him Doug. You guys will all call him Bowser, and I think that'll be funny, but, you know, will there be confusion between the character and the guy? What a great name. Our next question from YouTube from M. Slusark. Hello, Pack. With Crackdown 3 releasing to less than favorable reviews, do you think Microsoft will eventually just publish lower quality games on Game Pass and not produce physical copies for retail? Will Microsoft take a Netflix approach of quantity over quality now that it's purchased several developers in the last year? I don't. I don't think it's an all or nothing thing. I think that there are some games that absolutely fit what you described. And I think that, you know, to the extent that they greenlight a game that comes out and just doesn't have great quality, you're right. Going direct to, you know, to streaming, direct to subscription makes sense. I think Crackdown is one of those games, like the review scores are bad, but everybody thought it was fun. You know, it's just kind of like, it isn't a compelling game, but it's fun. And I think as a gamer, we're okay with like fun. You know, and we're okay if it's a little glitchy. You know, I'm sure I'll get a question on Anthem one of these days. It's same idea. Like, you know, I think that game reviewers, in fairness, I mean, I think they're fair. They don't like repetition. They don't like Me Too kind of games. And I think Crackdown's getting kind of dinged for not being that much of an advance over prior versions or other games. But no, I think Microsoft, the studios they bought, you know, they're going to get a couple of really high quality games. And so no, those games will come out, they'll be premium experiences. Whether they offer them physically or digitally only, I don't know. I think that, you know, the idea, you know, we're hearing the rumors of 2 Xboxes coming out under Project Scarlet. Well, that pretty clearly is one's not going to have physical copies and one probably will. There'd be no point in making 2 digital only boxes. So the streaming box is going to be able to play games without a physical copy, and the other box very likely will have a disk drive because it's really not expensive. They're like $10, you know, so it's not like the cost of production is hard. As long as there are gamers who want physical copies, I think they'll keep making them. You know, DVDs still exist, CDs still exist, you know, for music and movies. So why not game discs? So no, and as far as becoming the Netflix of games, I'm really skeptical about Game Pass working that way. Netflix crept up on the movie industry, and when they crept up, the movie industry was quite mature. They didn't have a good way of monetizing their content for what they call the long tail. So, you know, movies show in theaters and TV shows show real time. There is an intermediate level where the movies and TV shows are on HBO or they're on syndication like Seinfeld or something. But, you know, it was really hard to monetize older content, and Netflix provided this stream of cash for people to monetize their content. So, you know, I think that the games industry is not that mature. It's not as mature as the movie business, and I'm certain that the publishers would let Microsoft have their 10-year-old and 20-year-old games, but I don't think they'll let them have their 2-year-old games. So I don't think that Microsoft's going to get very much content that's current that people want to play. And if you notice, we've had a trend with remasters where we're bringing out these older games. You had Call of Duty Modern Warfare remastered, you've had Crash Bandicoot remastered. Those are making a ton of money selling as packaged products, So I don't see those things going on to a streaming service. I think the publishers are afraid they'll leave money on the table, and nobody wants to cut a Microsoft or an EA, who are offering subscription services, in on a big chunk of their profit. So I don't see it happening for several years. I'd say 10. So I'm very skeptical on that. But I will say that if Microsoft uses Game Pass as an opportunity to promote your next game, so they say put Fallout 3 and 4 on there and we'll promote Fallout 76, put Division 1 on there and we'll promote Division 2, then I think it works. Our next question from Patreon from Jack Shostrom. Rumors are flying that Xbox Game Pass is headed to Switch, along with several first-party Xbox games. Has Microsoft decided that releasing content on all platforms is more profitable than keeping it for yourself? Will Game Pass wind up on PS4 or PS5? Okay. I think that to the extent that a product doesn't drive system sales, so a game like Ori, probably nobody ever bought an Xbox to play Ori, but it's a great game. I think it's actually really enlightened of Microsoft to say we want to monetize this across platform. And I think that Microsoft's going to attract content that actually fits on the Switch and it fits the Switch audience and is appealing to the Switch audience. So I'm impressed that Microsoft's offering it up. I'm impressed that Nintendo is accepting it. And I love seeing collaboration like that. So I hope that's true. It's a rumor, we don't know. I hope it's true. And I think it shows a lot that Nintendo is excited about taking that content and Microsoft's going to offer it. Sony is not as friendly as far as helping its competitors to monetize their assets. Sony is very much all about exclusives. If you recall, Sony was the holdout on cross-platform play for Fortnite. And of course, they came around after 10 months or a year or something, but they were the holdout. And so I would say no, I don't think that Sony will collaborate with either Microsoft or Nintendo at least for a year or two. But if this works, and if we find a bunch of smaller games working that Microsoft could put on Switch, why not Fat Princess? Why not some of the smaller fun games? With the proliferation of $10 and $15, $20 inexpensive, bite-sized, fun experiences, and you are literally getting thousands of these on these consoles, ultimately it does make the most sense for everybody if they're multi-platform. But a lot of these guys are going to offer up games to EA because they want to be multi-platform. And a lot of them, if the only bidder is Microsoft, then that's where they go. But I think every creator would like their content to reach as many people as possible. So I think it's very developer friendly for Microsoft to say, hey, you're not dying a death on Xbox if you come here. We can also distribute through the Switch. And all this really does is makes Microsoft a publisher as opposed to a console manufacturer that has first-party titles supporting its console. You're not going to see Halo or Gears of War on the Switch. But, if you can see these indie games, I think like Cuphead would be amazing. It'd be too hard, but it would be amazing. One of the games that's rumored. Oh, good, yeah. So that would be amazing. And that's a game that deserves a broader audience. If you decided that the PlayStation 4 made more sense in your household than the Xbox One, and you don't have an extra $300 or $400 to buy a second or third console, you should not be deprived the ability to play Cuphead. You should be deprived the ability to play Halo. I get that. That's Microsoft putting hundreds of millions of dollars into a title, but Cuphead, was probably a $10 million investment for them. So yes, I think it's really enlightened to them. I'm impressed that they're willing to consider it. I don't know if the rumor's true, but props to Nintendo and props to Microsoft for doing this. Yes, PlayStation will figure it out if there's enough fan pressure, so put the pressure on them. And again, my advice to developers is don't sell your soul to a single console maker if you can avoid it. Best if you can do multi-platform. And companies like Activision will do Sekiro, and companies like EA will do A Way Out, and you can get your content on multi-platform. Okay, our next question from Patreon, I remember this guy, from Nick Carney, and we had the same or similar question from SIFTD from Shut Up. I like that name, Shut Up. Hey Pac, with the surprise success of Apex Legends and the middling reception for Anthem, what does it mean for the future of EA and Respawn / BioWare? Would it have been better for BioWare to release a single-player game instead. You know, I have to say, let me talk about BioWare first. I think that EA did something that was probably inadvertent in creating EA Origin Access, which is PC only. And therefore, you know, the players on EA Origin Access get the games a week early. And so people who bought Anthem got it a week early, which means that the review embargo lifted for PC before it did for console. But the PC version got crushed. And I have to say, you know, I think EA probably should have pushed the game out. With that said, you know, I think BioWare is a little tiny bit of a mess, and that's because Aaron Flynn left a year and a half or 2 years ago. Matt Bromberg left a couple of years ago, so those are the heads of Edmonton and Austin. They brought back Casey Hudson, who's a stud, maybe 18 months ago, and you know, Casey came in the middle of development of Anthem, and he's finishing it. But you know, I think that leadership matters at those studios. I think Casey's really good. They need to kind of start from scratch and make sure they have the right team and make sure they're working on the right product. And I don't think this means anything for Dragon Age. Like, I think Dragon Age will be phenomenal. I don't know if there's ever going to be another Mass Effect, but it's a talented studio. They're talented developers. You know, the graphics are great. There are a lot of complaints about repetitiveness, just the grind, you know, the idea that you have to grind it out forever. That stuff's fixable, you know, over time. I mean, you can't fix it in a week, but you can fix it in 6 months. So I think this is more symptomatic of EA's management. There's been a lot of departures there. You know, Patrick Soderlund left. I mean, he was the head of publishing, or head of studios. And I think you need continuity. You know, you lost, as you know, Jade Raymond, Amy Hennig, Patrick Bach, who ran DICE. You just can't lose that many, you know, shut down Visceral, that many talented, you know, leaders in the studios and not have a few hiccups. So this is a hiccup. I don't think it's a permanent problem for EA. It is. No, it's a big game.
Listen, there's trouble. Big trouble.
I don't think it's a permanent problem for EA. I mean, certainly I'm not worried about their sports titles. Fortunately for EA, their next two big games are both coming from Respawn. And, you know, Vince Zampella has never made a bad game. I don't think he's ever made a bad game. I think his lowest review score is low 80s, which is great. And if you look up Apex, which I did, 89, I mean, that's freaking amazing. So, you know, he is money. And they paid him for it because he's really good. He's really worth it. Stig Asmussen has never made a bad game. So I'm very confident the Star Wars game is great. I'm very confident. I'm calling it Titanfall Twist. You know, Andrew Wilson said they're doing a AAA game that's a twist on the Titanfall franchise. I'm very confident Titanfall Twist is going to be a big deal. So at least for the next year, sports titles should be intact. Titanfall Twist will be fine. Star Wars will be fine. Maybe Need for Speed sucks, like who knows, right? We'll find out. Those guys are hot and cold and mostly cold. But I think EA needs to actually get more stability in its studios and in its studio leadership. And again, I'm not going to ding the people who are running them now. They're all new. That's the problem. That Patrick was doing it from 05, I think. And you know, you lose the guy who ran your studios for 13 years, and you lose the head of DICE, who was essentially a co-founder way back when. You lose Jade. You know, who's running Motive? I don't know. And by the way, Jade's going to do something, which means she's going to poach some Motive people. You know, so that studio could be in disarray for a year or two. You know, nobody seems to realize this, but the Sledgehammer guys left at Activision, Condrey and Schofield. Condrey's already announced a deal with Take-Two. Where's he going to get people? Sledgehammer, EA. You know, they're up in the Bay Area. Schofield, same thing. He hasn't announced anything yet. He's doing something. So, you know, there's going to be disruption in the industry as good performers get poached from these studios. I left out Lucy Bradshaw at Maxis left back in 15, but still, we haven't seen a lot of Sims since then either. It's hard to lose talented people and keep continuity, and you do get hiccups in the games. And so, again, whatever you think of Aaron Flynn, you know, I love the guy, and I really think Casey Hudson's super capable, but you can't change leaders in the middle of game development and not expect hiccups. And they probably should have pushed the game out 6 months to get 10 points higher review scores. Look at Rockstar. You know, they take 6-8 years to make a game. and they're perfect. Red Dead, 8.5 years. And, you know, I'm sure they had something ready in 3, but they took 5 more years just to make it perfect. And people talked about the horse's balls swaying, and, you know, with every step of that. So, you know, but that matters. You know, I think that one of the things interesting about Apex is that it flipped the model upside down. If you think about the spectrum of games, we had at one end AAA single player experiences. At the other end, we had, you know, usually single or multiplayer, but free to play experiences. And as we moved from AAA single player $60 to free to play completely, you ended up with a category of $60 games that had both single and multiplayer, and they bolted on inside the $60 game free experiences that maybe got you to spend money, like Call of Duty with multiplayer. And that morphed into Call of Duty with Blackout. And that was Overwatch, which was multiplayer. And it morphed into buying cosmetic things and skins. And that morphed into Grand Theft Auto single player, but we added Grand Theft Auto Online behind the paywall. You had to pay $60. FIFA, you have to buy it to play Ultimate Team and spend more money. So the paywall was in front. They flipped it. The free game comes first, and there is a Titanfall game coming out. So what they did was they flipped the model backwards, and they said, let's do free to play first. And as we know, 25 million players in a week, and I mean, I'm sure it's 35 now, and they're probably not going to give us a milestone until it's 50, but it's a big number. The interesting thing is, you know, how many people bought Titanfall 1 and 2? 8.5 million. So how many of those 25 million bought Titanfall 1 or 2? 8.5 million. I mean, it can't be more than that because that's how many they sold. So there's 17 million people who didn't buy Titanfall, who are getting some Titanfall loving. I mean, that's cool. And by the time we get to the Titanfall Twist game, you'll have 100 million people who have downloaded this thing, maybe 200 million, a lot. So the odds of 1% of those people, an extra 2 million buying Titanfall, pretty high. I think it's brilliant. Battle Royale built in for $60 and Titan Battles, Battle Royale. And if you're in the human world in Apex Legends and you see those Titans over there on the other side of the fence is going to say, you want to get here? Either grind it out for 3 months and here's a path and here's challenges and you can get some Titans, or just buy Titanfall Twist and for $60 you can play Titans immediately. Now, nobody who plays a free-to-play game is going to go, that's not fair, because you got it free. Guess what? You want to play Titans? $60. But they'll let you earn it. But if you buy the $60 game, you accelerate that. I think they'll sell 5 extra million copies, 10, 20. They're going to do really well. This is brilliant. 8 classes of Titan characters with different skills. Like, of course they're doing this. So I'm really impressed that Respawn figured this out. I'm really impressed that EA let them do it. And my vibe I got was when EA bought Respawn, this was in development. Now this, EA bought Respawn in November 17. This thing came out in February of 19, so 14 months later. It was either a very well formulated idea or way under development already. Vince figured this out for sure. And props to him, because this is a risky proposition. If this had happened and flopped, he would look like a complete goat. And I mean goat, not greatest of all time, but so he went from goat, small G-O-A-T, to big goat, capital G, period O, period A, period T. I think EA, as much as we want to beat the crap out of them, they have shown a lot of leadership as a management team in giving a really talented developer free rein to try something that's disruptive, innovative, different from anything anybody's ever done. It's not as cost effective probably to make a game like Anthem and give them 8 years or 10 years, but you get better quality if you spend more time. And all these guys, I mean, the BioWare guys are every bit as talented as the Rockstar San Diego guys. Give them enough time and they'll all create masterpieces. So, you know, again, it's a business and you're going to make mistakes occasionally, and this one was a mistake. And EA has a lot of disruption at the leadership level of their studios, so we're going to keep seeing that. Thank you for joining us on Pachter Factor. Please remember, if you are not a Patreon patron, you can't afford it, if you are a Amazon Prime member or your family has a Prime account, you can link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and you can subscribe to Pachter Factor that way. That will throw a couple of bucks to SIFTD and that'll help Shane out. It costs you nothing. It's free part of your Prime subscription. Once you set it up and just follow the instructions below, you can re-up every month and just click one button. It's pretty easy, but that really helps. So if you can do that, I'm asking you, please, if you are too lame to join Patreon or too cheap, if you are too lame to follow me on Twitter, and you're willing to spend 20 minutes listening to my wisdom, would you please spend an extra minute and link your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account so that we can get a couple of bucks a month, and all you have to do is re-up it every month by clicking one button. Please, please, please. At Michael Pachter on Twitter. I promise you, if you join out of guilt, if you follow me out of guilt and you DM me, I will answer your DM. So that's the small price you have to pay. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. So in the past,
you called this, by the way, Pat.
What did I call?
You, in the last episode, before we recorded these, you called out that publishers were going to make AAA games free to play. Like you called it.